Tyler, let's begin with some news from late last week. Steve Angeli, the veteran quarterback in the three-man Irish quarterback competition, hopped into the transfer portal. Number one, were you surprised by his decision?
Not overly surprised. We kind of felt like somebody from that trio of Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchey, and CJ Carr was going to have to enter the transfer portal. And based on what you guys saw in that blue gold game, what the media saw in a scrimmage the week before that, and just kind of the entire spring, it was really a too close to call type of situation from our perspective. Now, obviously, the coaches are getting a little bit more information, and maybe some of the players and just people inside the Goog, they know what's going on. And look, if there was any separation from the younger guys, Carr and Minchey, over Angeli, then you were always going to have to choose those two guys because those are your staples going forward. They have more eligibility and they have a better chance of being not only a starter in 2025, but in the future as well. Steve Angeli has 2 years of eligibility and he's taking those into the transfer portal with him. So that's basically what it boiled down to was, yeah, maybe Carr and Minchey, they do have a little bit more upside than Angeli. And Notre Dame's going to have to tap into that in 2025, 2026, and maybe even 2027 to kind of establish themselves as a perennial college football playoff contender, not just the contender that they were with the transfer quarterback in 2024 with Riley Leonard, but we're talking about the now and we're talking about the future. And for Notre Dame, that's CJ Carr, Kenny Minchey, and it's not Steve Angeli. So I was not overly surprised.
Would you agree, Tyler, that it wasn't like Angeli had a bad spring, but as you just mentioned, the other two guys are a big part of the future, and those two guys had really good springs and maybe enhanced who they were as quarterbacks?
Yeah, I think I was in the camp of Carr and Minchey were always going to have to take it from Angeli, and I think that was the rational camp. You know, anyone that had seen Steve Angeli play any ounce of football for Notre Dame over the last 3 years, now it wasn't much, but it got to be a fairly significant amount. You're talking about a guy who's thrown 80 passes in college football games compared to Carr and Minchey, who've combined to throw one. Minchey's the only guy who's thrown a pass, and it was that one. Carr's never thrown a pass, but now we're talking about practice. And like I said, there had to have been something that went on in the last month or so where coaches said, okay, CJ Carr can make that throw. Maybe Steve Angeli can't. Kenny Minchey can get out of that pocket and then make that throw. Maybe Steve Angeli can't. So we're talking about potential here. And I wanted to bring up what Angeli had done in the past because that absolutely factored into what Notre Dame was going to do this offseason in this quarterback competition and making this decision. But ultimately, potential kind of can outweigh experience. And like I said, it's not like Steve Angeli has a just enormous amount of this experience. Sam Hartman did. Riley Leonard, to an extent, did. Steve Angeli did not. So then when you're thinking about what he had done or what he had not done in his career, and you're stacking it up against what CJ Carr might be able to do, what Kenny Minchey might be able to do, it turns out the latter of those two things, the potential of those two guys, ended up being a little bit more significant than what Steve Angeli had done in his career to this point. And now, I also want to say this, though. Steve Angeli could very well go somewhere else and have a very successful career. I think a lot of people in Notre Dame blue and gold are probably rooting for that, but they're also very much rooting for these two guys who have all this potential, these younger guys, to be even better. And that's what they're kind of believing, and that's the direction they're going to go.
Two-part question. Number one, do you believe Carr or Minchey has an advantage right now as we head now toward fall camp? And part two of the question is this. Do you think this alters the timeline to when Marcus Freeman might name a new starting quarterback?
Well, there was always, I guess, a possibility that you go into the fall with all three guys on the roster. And at that point, you need every ounce of time. Marcus Freeman said, though, after the blue gold game, hey, no matter what, we want to be down to two guys in this competition. So even if there were three here, they were going to be choosing between two of them. Now it's made a little easier. Like, let's just call it like it is. Angeli out of the picture. You have two guys that can start. You're not going to start Blake Hebert. You're not going to start Rezak. I've seen Tyler Buckner's name get thrown around like, hey, do we need to introduce him into the quarterback room? Maybe for depth purposes, but you're choosing between two guys. And I think you'll be able to do that. You'll be able to make a decision on CJ Carr and Kenny Minchey by mid-fall camp. Like, there's no reason to do it in the summer unless you're someone that believes, oh, you need to start fall camp day one with the true leader, because you had that in Sam Hartman. You had that in Riley Leonard. I think that's a little overrated. I would like to see this play out maybe 7, 10, 14 days into fall camp, so you really have a true feel of if it's Carr or if it's Minchie. And then to the other part of your question, you're going to have to figure that out then anyway, because right now, Darren, I truly believe it's 50-50. I think these guys have equal shots. I mentioned earlier that Kenny Minchie has thrown 1 pass in a college game. CJ Carr has thrown 0. I believe Kenny Minchie has gotten into the end zone on the ground, and obviously CJ Carr hasn't done much, but has even handed the ball off. I'm not sure. I know he's taken a knee in one of those garbage time games. Like, that's about all we've seen him do on a college football Saturday. So you're going to need to see him do whatever he did in the spring, because it had to have been a lot to kind of push Angeli out the door. And you're going to need to see it from Minchie as well. So I truly believe that this is a 50-50 battle. When it was 3 guys, I think it was like 33, 33, 33, and that extra percentage point was going to, I guess, one of the 2 guys that's still here. Like, I thought it was close this whole time. Maybe, again, with the coaches who have seen more than the media have and the fans have, they have a better understanding that, hey, maybe CJ Carr had 45% of the share when Angeli was still here and the other guys were like in the 30s and 20s. But right now, when you whittle it down to 2, I think it's a 50-50 shot. These guys are about the same age, and Minchie's been here for a year longer. But again, when you boil it down to what they've done on the field, it all comes down to what they do in practices, because there hasn't been a lot of in-game experience with these 2 guys.